think anybody else wants it.
Sound like
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
9:32.
Good morning.
Call Coast Board, January board meeting to order. We will have the invocation and the pledge of allegiance. And the invocation will be done by board member Sid.
He's not here.
Yeah, he is.
No, that's
Oh,
not
that's
Sid.
Oh, Mr. Kiss, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's all right, it's Monday.
Anyway, I'm here, so I will do the,
I'll do it for you, man. That's what I'm saying.
name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Father, what's up, Father? We thank you all for this opportunity once again for 2016 that you will allow us to come together as a Coast Board and that you will work with us and help us to work with this community. Bless our board and bless the staff as we go into the new year. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, we will have the roll call.
Catherine D'Angelo. Here. Sid Blackwelder. Darryl Wyckoff.
Here.
Wilbur Jakes.
Yes.
Lily Jean Johnson. Here. Marvin King.
Here.
Joseph Lazara.
Here.
Chuck Hotwell. Robert Sheehan.
Here.
Bernard Silverman.
Here.
Ivory Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Good. All right, we'll have an acknowledgement of visitors. So we have Suzanne.
Suzanne Harris, Georgetown Community.
Okay.
We have staff, we have Pamela Bellamy, Mr. Mention, Mr. Nesbitt, what's your name again? Doug Harriet. Tom Berta, and
I like that one.
Al DeAndre.
Okay, good. And we have our auditor.
Yep. Yes, I'm sorry.
President.
Dean Richardson is here with us today.
Hey, Dean.
Good to see you there.
Good. Okay. I want you to, the public comment, there'll be only a 3-minute limit for any conversation. And then,
Is there,
do we have any comments from the public at this time? There being none, we'll go on to employee recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had our State of the Coast meeting the other night, and I'm just wanted to acknowledge some of the folks that were elected by their peers as Employee of the Year. In customer service, it was Al DeAndrea. Sal, thank you. Customer service. I think it's really interesting. Well, Doug Harriet was for admin. He's doing a great job this year. We thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And then I thought it was really interesting that the operators elected 2 paratransit drivers. You know, we've had a lot of discussions about paratransit costs and you know how expensive it is, but we've also talked about what an important service it is. And these 2 folks are awesome with the passengers. They love their passengers, and I'm really happy that they were named operators of the year. It's Miss Mary Nesbitt. Thank you so much. And Mr. Jewel Johnson. And they have their plaques with them. And then last but not least, the State of the Coast meeting was a mandatory meeting. But someone was in the Caribbean on a cruise. So I question on whether or not we really should allow this to happen. But then also, we've also had a breakdown today. So I may just want to skip this altogether. No, I think Tom Berta has done a phenomenal job. If you look at our numbers, I think I was doing the numbers the other day. We've had a 235% decrease in in-service breakdown between the first half of 2015 and the second half of 2015. It's a night and day. I know the drivers appreciate it. I know customer service appreciates it. I know our passengers appreciate it. So, Maintenance Employee of the Year is Mr. Tom Berta.
All right.
Awesome crew, and we had a good night the other night.
Buses.
I'm sorry?
I said, I just drove by that broken down bus, the big yellow bus.
Yes, we all did. Yeah.
Little minor breakdown on that.
Yeah,
lost
it's a
air.
little mild breakdown.
Just lost air.
You're doing a great job, Tom.
We talked about, I mentioned him first.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you all.
All right.
Yeah, if you'd like.
Thank you all.
Hang on.
Hold it, let me say to these guys, we really do appreciate, from the board, I mean, really, we do appreciate all the hard work you guys do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, James.
Yes, sir, we thank you very much. Always. Yes, sir. We thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, young lady.
You're welcome.
All the hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you too, bro. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Pam. Erica.
Okay, followed by approval of the meeting, minutes.
Approval of we had the approval of the minutes.
Yes.
I make a motion.
Second. All right. Like to call to the floor that we have, is there any discussion on the minutes? There being none, I vote to have the approval of the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Okay, minutes have been approved. Thank you. All right. Then we go on to the agenda regarding the resolutions.
If I could just say a couple quick things about the consent agenda. First of all, I really appreciate the board letting us do this. I think it will save time. But it's important to me that if you do have any questions about these approvals, that, you know, it's certainly within your purview to pull any of these items out of consent and we can talk about them individually. So I'm not aware of any other time in the past where this board has used a consent agenda before, so it's kind of new to the folks. I just one change from what we talked about in Finance Committee was we actually grouped this approval, the authorization for me to go out to the local governments and ask for next year's funding. So that kind of saved the length of the consent agenda a little bit. But it is for, you know, all the cities who are currently funding us, as well as Surfside and any others. I think possibly a conversation coming up with North Myrtle Beach even. So so that's the only change. The others sent out, and there you go. So if you want to go ahead and.
I have a question on number 7, on 67, Title 6 one.
Yes.
I just asked that question.
Sure.
I read that policy, and I see where we are required to put up signage, posters, that kind of thing. And I don't see that now. Is that something that we've been in violation of, or that it's just new to us, or that we're agreeing to now?
Posters for.
It was in the minutes there, posters saying that that we are committed to serving all, you know, all our passengers equally, whatever. Right? The wording is in there.
Yeah.
It's, I think, Appendix G, I think, or H or something.
I think.
we've got new posters coming.
Is that what it is? And where do they get posted?
They're posted in the bulletin boards.
Are they not supposed to be posted in the terminal on the buses? But I don't think they are they? Unless I don't see them.
I don't know if they're on the buses. I know they've been in the glass encased
I've seen them there.
cases.
Yeah.
We've had them there, and I think we ordered new ones, and they just haven't gotten here yet.
Well, I don't know exactly where they need to be posted, but we need to follow the regulations on that. I mean,
Yep.
it's serious business and it's important.
Yep. So
So, I guess the question, have they not been on the buses and they should have been and now they will be?
I have
don't
not
know
seen
about
them on
being
buses,
the
although I don't
buses.
see a whole lot, but I think I would see that in time, you know.
yeah, we'll look into it and make sure that we are following the policy. But it's certainly in the policy, so we'll make sure we're doing it.
Okay.
I'm good.
And Brian, also, if I may, Mr. Chair, I got a question on the, since the consent agenda, Brian just went through that. Basically, what is it saying, Brian? What are you saying about?
Well, essentially, a consent agenda is having one vote for all of these resolutions.
Okay.
For for all intents and purposes.
Okay.
So in parliamentary procedure, you give the committee or the board the opportunity to pull any individuals out of the consent agenda because they want to talk about them individually. Otherwise, if there's nobody who wants to do that, then you do one vote and say they're all approved, and then we're going to pass along a bunch of resolutions to sign.
So we'll still sign the
Yeah, I got you. I just to make sure I understood what it was about, that's all I wanted
We
to
don't
know.
have to read each one
We have
individually.
this, we
Okay.
have got to do that.
Okay,
I
You
move
have?
we- I move we pass the
Okay, good.
consent
Okay.
agenda.
I'd like to move that we
Okay, so you have a motion for
have a
Mr.
motion on the
Silverman.
floor to approve.
I make a
all
motion.
the resolution.
Need a second.
I made a motion.
Okay, we have a second?
All right, I'll second it.
Okay. We have any discussion on it?
But one last thing, make sure I clear that. So all these resolutions already sit under the number 8 already outlined right here on the bottom.
We're
So that's
passing
right.
them all at once.
So we ain't got to read nothing. I mean,
Correct.
We're good.
None of those.
That's what I thought. But no, but the thing is, if we have a problem with one of them, can we?
Yeah, then you can take it off the
You
reading.
can say I move to
Okay.
take this one off of the consent agenda
I got
and
you.
move it to the bottom of the agenda.
Okay, I
And
got
then we
you.
read it.
I'm clear.
Are you clear?
Yep. Yes, sir.
We have a vote to accept the resolution as stated. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Okay, approval have been, the resolutions has been accepted. Is there any discussion on it at all?
Approval of the-
Discussion?
Approval, for the record, is approval of
Okay, just
a
wanted to
consent
go through
agenda.
and if there's any discussion and further on it.
Right.
There being none,
I
then
have
the
a,
resolution, what?
I have one question.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah, that we've asked Surfside for money.
I don't think so, but we haven't asked them in a while.
Yeah.
No, we asked him.
Suicide, Norfolk Beach.
We've asked him
But it's
before.
been a while though, right?
It's been a while,
I
yeah.
think so.
But,
I don't
yeah.
think it's been that long.
With last year,
I think it was last year, or very,
Last
yeah, pretty recently.
But I don't know if they were sent out, those letters. You know, we approved them, but I'm not sure if those letters were ever sent out.
And they may have never been followed up with anything, you know.
Yeah,
People
I don't-
get junk
I don't
mail,
think
all
they
that's
were.
from my junk mail, I'm
I
sure.
don't think they were.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'll go out and talk to them.
Good at Surfside?
We have
Yes,
approval
sir.
of the resolutions as stated. The service committee report?
We did meet earlier in the month, and there were 3 items on the agenda. Statistics in terms of bus ridership. And at that time, Brian indicated that the CDP update was 90% finished.
And it's still 90%. I would, have that conversation with the county transportation committee this morning, or this afternoon, and I'm gonna have to tell them that, between the audit and shoring up NTD and building my play set for my kids in the backyard, I'm really, that's top priority now, is to get that thing written and done, so. Yes, we'll get there.
And the other item was the proposed new schedule, which will begin in April, in fact, April 1st. And some of the public meetings have been held already.
Yeah, we've had at least 2. The first one was actually a race path neighborhood community meeting.
Myrtle Beach.
In Myrtle Beach, and there were 17 people there. It was a really good turnout for that type of meeting, and it was their meeting, so we asked to be put on their agenda. They were really appreciative of it, and certainly the proposed service improvements represent a really good increase in service for them, better access to the system and that sort of thing. And then I guess it was earlier this week. My calendar's broken. I'm sorry. We met at the Family Justice Center down in Georgetown, High Market Street. This is one of our meetings that were scheduled, not quite as good a turnout. We have other meetings in Georgetown planned, but I think the meeting went pretty well, and the proposed changes were well received. I think one of the reasons why we may not have had the turnout is Doug and Erica got on the 3 o'clock 16 bus and basically went through the service changes with the 31 passengers that were on the route. So we're gonna count them as being at the public meeting as well, I think. But again, you know, they were really appreciative that we made that little extra effort to get out on the bus, and we're gonna keep doing that. Definitely the 10, the 10.
That is a good idea, because a lot of these people wanna get home and do whatever.
Right. The 10 and the 15s both, you know, there's some pretty substantive changes to those two routes, and we're gonna get out there and talk to folks. So, so far so good.
Approximate number then? What should we say, 40?
40 people at public meetings?
No, I mean at this one. So we say 31.
Well, yeah,
There was
roughly.
one at Andrews as well, and I don't know how many people were present at that one.
Yeah, we haven't had that one
We
yet.
haven't
That
had
one's
it
on
yet.
Tuesday.
That's on next Tuesday.
Oh, they didn't have it.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe they
Who's
thought they had.
responsible for getting the notices out about the meeting?
Erica and Michelle on our staff.
I mean, I work closely with the Family Justice Center.
Okay.
Know about it.
Well, I mean, that happens. I
I
mean,
know
we
that.
have,
But you said more plans, so.
Yes,
Right.
Yes, there are.
they're all, actually our website has been adjusted so that there's a pop-up when you go to our website that says public meetings and directs you to a portion of our site where all of those scheduled meetings are.
There are almost 10 more.
Yeah, there's quite a few, and we're adding another one of Murals Inlet, because there's some changes on the 16 there in Murals Inlet that we want to talk to those folks about. I'm trying to think, both, or at least WPDE has put it on their website, put our press release on their website. So we've posted them at the Transit Center in Myrtle Beach. They're posted out here, I believe. We probably ought to try to work on some sort of posting there at the Georgetown Transit Center. There's not much to post it on yet. February 6th, we're gonna shelters.
Well, what
What
was
was the
the
reaction
Yes.
last night? Were there
So-
people,
Wow.
So,
the
Brian,
changes, or did they not like the changes?
I attended the one in Georgetown, and that
I did
was
too.
one of the items that came up with those making comments that publicity was not well established, and I think we really need to work on that.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you talked about on the buses, which is an
Right.
excellent idea,
right.
For
But,
churches
um,
and stuff like
publicity.
Well,
Keep getting people out.
there's probably some development of a mailing list that we
Right.
need to probably engage in. You know, we've talked to the papers, you know, about putting it in there, and it's on the website. I guess I would love for, certainly if you have any ideas on where we could post the information, that would
We
be
want
great.
leaders there that can bring it back to their flock, you know, at the meeting.
And, you know, in addition to
They
the
don't have to be
meetings,
there, but they can bring it back.
in addition to the meetings that we've scheduled, you know, that we're the host, and we are, especially in Myrtle Beach, going to neighborhood associations, and going to their meetings. Like, we have one of those on the 38th Avenue neighborhood. We're gonna be meeting at the 38th Avenue Fire Station. We're working on a location in Murals Inlet, possibly the hospital. We're working on that. So, more meetings.
I think it's gonna be the fire station.
Fire Station, Murals Inlet.
Yeah, it's on the 28th.
So,
Tomorrow.
I mean, the efforts are there. Staff is trying to get the word out. So if there's any other places you think we need to post information, please let us know.
And they have been giving flyers out on the buses too.
Right.
Okay.
I also attended that meeting on the 25th, and so Lily and I were both there, representing the board. It would be nice if other members of the board attend some of the other meetings, and this way, if there's any comments to be made from the board, it would be nice for our board members to make comments there. Thank you.
Something else I forgot, the report from the Georgetown Times was there,
Yeah.
So I expect perhaps there'll be something in today's Times about that meeting.
Right, I'm sure that.
Yeah, and WPDE interviewed Doug as well.
Oh, yeah, they came to
So hopefully more information will be getting out. And we've put out a,
I've heard it on the TV every morning last
I
week,
did too.
good.
early, 6 o'clock.
Good.
and 5 year
Hey, we're gonna talk, since the TV station showed up at this public meeting, we're gonna ask them if they wanna do any interviews with us, about them, because we'll certainly take those. So just so a quick summary on some of the stuff in the service committee that we talked about. I mean, the big takeaways, and I'm happy to go through the service changes if anybody has any questions, but, I think a big takeaway was that in the fall months, we've had about a 2.5% increase in ridership over the last fall, which I think is actually pretty good given the rains that we've had. We had a day with no service in October, and I'm pretty pleased with those numbers. So that was part of the presentation there in service committee.
And I also understand that the Sandy Island staff has a bus shelter there in place.
Yeah, we
Oh, really?
have a picture of that. I'll send it to y'all.
Really?
Mhm.
Yeah, I did
And
see
that's
that.
the county
Yeah, I saw that.
putting those up for us, and we certainly appreciate that.
I county got it from the city? Because the county.
I think the county has some,
Oh, really?
so they're placing them. There'll probably be one out in Andrews. At the meeting last week, I heard, I mean, I'm paraphrasing what my folks said, but it sounded like the biggest concern out there was more trips in from Andrews and maybe the shelters there in downtown Georgetown. Did you get anything else out of the meeting from that, in terms of what the concerns were?
There's still some sections of Georgetown where they're not even aware of the schedule or that there were bus stops.
Right,
Or they could flag the bus down
right.
from where they were.
Well, and that's a problem that hopefully we'll correct when we do define stops and, get our bus stops out there and people can actually see evidence of us on the street.
I did make that comment that we
And we're doing that, good, good.
But it was a positive meeting.
yes.
We were pleased with what they're trying to do.
So we're gonna try to go back to Georgetown again and try to rehash this again in the future?
Well, a couple things. One, I have a meeting with Saul Hemingway tomorrow, just to give him a heads up on what's going on. Talk to him a little bit about some of the changes. There were some changes down in Georgetown that we aren't making that I would have liked to have made, like going down to Maryville and HGTC. And so those are certainly on the agenda for future expansion. And so I'll lay those out for them. I have a meeting with, I don't remember their last names, but Beverly and Vicky at the Family Justice Center. Yeah, they're the co-directors down there. They definitely wanted to express some concerns and some ideas for expansion. I know Andrews is heavy on their list. So I'll be, we haven't scheduled that meeting. I was gonna go down to that meeting this past week and meet with them, but neither one of them were there and I was prepping for this. So I made sure I contacted them and I'll get down there and talk to them soon.
So be nice to them, they have money.
Okay,
So the
good
bus,
safety tip.
so the bus actually, the buses go, I know they go to Georgetown, but they go to the whole county? Buses are just-
Yeah, I mean, like we only have one trip that goes to
Not the whole
Choppy
county, but I
and,
mean,
there's
but
one-
Andrews,
there's
they don't go
one-
that far to it.
Yeah, we do.
Andrews,
They do? Okay.
We have one trip in each direction in
Okay.
Andrews. There's probably enough business down there where we could maybe do 3 peak hour trips, those types of things.
We just signed those resolutions for you to go talk to Surfside, North Myrtle Beach, et cetera. I know that this is probably the first time, in a long time, we've contacted those entities. If you need any help, when maybe Kitty will go with you.
Okay.
Or maybe I'll go with you when you go to Surfside. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Anything that we can do is, as a board and a team behind the coach,
I appreciate it.
we're willing to do.
I wrote a letter and sent it to the city of Myrtle Beach yesterday, that I will send to the board, just so that you all can read it. And it actually is the best piece so far that kind of lays out kind of where I see things going with the service. I mean, the purpose of the letter was to tell them about some of these service changes. They had concerns about some of the neighborhoods there in downtown that need better access. And a lot of our changes, especially on Route 10, are sort of focused on providing that access. So the letter describes those changes, but then it talks about, you know, after April 1st, I want to set the service for, you know, a good 18 months while we work on some of these infrastructure issues that we have, like defined bus stops and you know, I go over the reasons why we need to define bus stops and, you know, AVL and getting, you know, some better passenger information systems in place. And doing all that while the system is still small, so that from which we'll pivot and start growing. And, you know, so trying to do major expansion while you're trying to define all your bus stops just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So the letters kind of laid it out and organized my brain, if you will. So it's a good read and something that I think I'll probably be sending, you know, similar letters to all of our other funders.
I know you're gonna send us a copy, and I'm gonna make sure I'm clear. The letter articulating that, the new route changes and so forth?
Yeah, I met, well, just the ones that were particular to Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
But the most important part I want you all to read is the part of why I want to set the service where it's at for a while, so that we can kind of get some of this background stuff done. You know, and we met with John Peterson in December, and I was trying to sort of put the TDP in front of them as being sort of the silver bullet on their funding agreement requirement of a corridor study. And so the conversation kind of went on about, well, you know, we're not really talking about a corridor study, it's sort of a semantic issue with, you know, what we call things. So the letter is really an attempt to focus in on their concerns, you know, talk about, you know, the numbers and the reasons why we think these service changes support them. The other big thing about our service changes that's going to be huge is that we'll be serving the airport in both directions, directly to and from downtown and the transit center to the airport. Okay, so, you know, in the current system, if you want to get from the transit center to the airport, you've got to take the Route 10 and go all around to Broadway to the beach and then Coastal Grand Mall and all the way around it. Well, now you can get on the 15 South and go straight to the airport. And that's critical because people typically have time constraints when they're going to the airport. And then the same will hold true when you're coming from the airport. So I think the city will be really excited about that. Yes, sir?
Will we be able to have a rep in the airport like we used to go around and kind of pump up,
you know,
or advertise the bus service?
Let me think about that. I at the very least, we're going to get pertinent, real-time, up-to-date information about our services.
I think if we could partner somehow with Myrtle Beach, you know, as you walk down those corridors.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the chamber.
Are you
I think
talking-
they're the chamber signs. Boy, those are nice signs. If we could tag something on to those signs, that would be extremely helpful.
They're not gonna happen.
We
I don't-
had, at
I-
one time, we had a
The chamber not
circular
gonna do
that
that.
went around the airport.
They're not gonna do that.
A circular that took them to the different parking facilities. And the parking facilities are getting so big now. I don't know what happened to that.
Yeah,
Well,
they're using golf carts now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we don't have the bus really
Right.
to do something like that,
You
but
know-
we did do that, and it was a good service.
I agree with Mickey. I don't think it's going to happen, not right now anyway, but that might be something that along we can take up with the Transportation Committee, because we are in there with the airport. The airport's a county group,
Right.
and so that might be something that we can, you know,
Well,
get into a little bit easier.
What
I'm
we
going to be
really-
talking to Transportation Committee about these changes this afternoon. Kirk Lovell will be there.
What we really need is to have someone inside the airport saying that we have a bus service. that comes here.
Right.
Well, I don't think that's
And
gonna
we,
happen.
well,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know,
we had to
I
try
don't
that.
know,
and-
I
yeah,
know,
that-
but, you know, times have changed.
I thought the taxi cab drivers protested about that, they did
Mhm.
not, but I read in the
Now
they-
paper.
Now
You know what,
can
they
back over.
protested about the kiosk thing. I think we're trying to get an idea of a kiosk.
Yeah, well, and we even wanted a person standing there behind their information, because I came through there after Christmas, and I asked them if there was a bus service, they have an information thing.
I didn't know.
They have no idea.
Well, we certainly gotta fix that
Yeah.
problem.
I'd just
And I
like
looked at him, I
to,
said, really?
I asked the question 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Nobody
But we
really.
could, you know. I
And
mean,
you know, that's not a biggie.
Well, and we have met, Michelle and I have met with Kirk Lovell, you know, last fall, and he had not acknowledged that problem. So I think he'll be a willing partner to help us at least get better information in there.
But I wonder if they'll tell you there's a,
A couple of years ago, didn't that blow up? Was it?
Right.
Blew up,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
It
They had
was.
an ambassador service.
but I
Yeah,
wonder
ambassador
if,
service.
but I wonder if they tell people there's taxi service. That's what I
Taxi
would-
service, grant.
That's what I'd like to find out. Next time you're there in the
Well,
airport.
taxi service, isn't there a sign, ground transportation?
Right.
The taxis are out the
all
window.
airports
you
got
can
ground
see them
service. I
lining
mean,
up.
as we walk in the airport, you see ground.
No, but I'm just saying that inside, because a lot of people get, I know like my husband, he has 14 people before he even gets to the street. He wants to know this or that or the other thing. He would be one that would be, go there and say, do we have this, do we have that? I mean, what is the big thing about saying, yes, there is a bus service, it comes every so often, or hand them something.
Right, give them a
We-
schedule.
Right.
This is really political. This is really political that we have been up against this battle since I've been on the board. And,
That's right.
and I'm sure Timothy Wilson been around. It's been a battle with the airport. It's very complicated. They're going to fight. And it's not really the airport, it's more or less the rules that they have put in place that have forced other entities like the taxi cab. They pay money to go out there, and they're going to fight, do whatever they can. Level Uber, you know, they're trying to do all they can to fight. So I don't want to see.
Yeah, but I think 2 things. One, we have better service
Right.
proposed. You know, it'll go to 8 o'clock, which is, you know, good. I mean, that's a much broader side of it. And I think the airport is now a partner, you know, at least with Kirk.
I think that if I'm not mistaken, they're going to renovate the old side over.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing over
I
there.
don't think anybody
They're putting
has-
their offices in there.
I don't think anybody has gone back to them since they've gotten a new, what, a general manager or whatever you call them.
Well, I've talked to them. I've been there. I've
Oh,
been
you
there.
have, yeah.
It's the ladies in charge.
So,
But I mean, have we asked, asked them about, giving out information? I know they didn't want us in there
Yeah.
because Al was the one of the ones that was to stand by the door, and he was accused of sending people, walking them to buses and all, which he wasn't doing.
Well, Kirk acknowledged the lack of information and was willing to help us update the information. So now that we have some information that we really want in there and updated for April 1st, then
I do have one suggestion. It don't hurt to try. It may work, it may not work. I would suggest that when you get time, sit down with Brad Dean and pick Brad's brain a little bit. Because Brad has connection with this community as far as getting in the airport.
right.
Pick Brad's brain a little bit, and Brad can give some pointers as to how he make corroborate with you or something. I would talk to Brad and see what suggestions he may have, because he's definitely been around that
Yes, sir.
system for a while. I'll let you get that meeting if you call one.
Okay.
Well, they got a transportation meeting today.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Well, I'm just talking about as far as talking to Brad Dean, because see, Brad,
Yeah.
they have a booth in there, the chamber. And they're talking to Brad trying to tell you some things that might be instrumental in getting you in there, so that'd be interesting.
One thing I wanted to bring up also was our Route 16 bus. We'll be going to Georgetown Hospital on the new schedule. So that's,
Georgetown Hospital?
yes.
Okay, that's in the same place in Georgetown? I thought they moved.
Is
They're
that the
expanding
Waccamaw?
like
Expanding,
mad.
Yeah,
expanding,
it's down
okay.
for, oh, I
You know,
don't.
it's
thought
right in
it
town.
was
We
cheaper.
do go to Waccamaw.
You know,
Georgetown
Georgetown Hospital is one of the
Georgetown.
top-rated
The
hospitals.
Waccamaw is a new name.
Yeah, they-
Yes,
So,
they both have it.
It's really a
Highlands.
top-flight hospital.
Highlands.
Yeah, they
So-
can have it.
It's really grown.
so that's all I have on service committee.
And over, you know that place over in Star Tech? Over in, down the far. I don't know if I know there was the people that asked me about buses. I mean, there may not be enough people to catch a bus, but there were people that were asking. That may be 10 years down the road, but people were asking, since they had that facility, they have hired more people too.
Right.
So there might be
Is
something.
that north of International Boulevard?
Right.
Yeah.
So my brother used to catch the cab all the time, and he can holler about a bus. I said, man, you gonna go to the bus just for you? That ain't gonna work. But anyway, I just thought people that might need to ride out there or something, but that's right down the road.
We talked about that, Mickey, with the regional development, you know,
Mhm.
what was his name? Brad
Loftus.
Lofton, thank you. That was part of the discussions on the early, because I was there, and they liked it, but there was real, and Mickey hit upon the point, there's really not enough people.
I know, not enough people to do it.
Okay, we'll go on to
Sometime in
the
the future, maybe.
PAC committee report.
We did meet as a group 2 weeks ago. My wife is convinced that the 5th round of anesthesia I've had in 6 weeks has influenced my short-term memory. And I think she's probably correct, because I forgot her name at one point the other day. And after 20 years, that's not a good thing. We had a fair overlap in our conversation between the service committee and the KC committee, in particular, identifying the major information gap that we have as an agency is a inability to bring in rider input at a fairly high level fashion. And so we discussed one possibility is creating the Citizens Oversight Committee, COCs?
CAC, Service Advisory Committee.
As per the bylaws, and an alternative was suggested that suggested that those bylaws would result in a fairly high level of structure, fairly rigid set of conversations, and we may not be prepared in our user group to actually handle that. It may just not get the kind of input that we want and we need. So I think as a group, we determined to postpone formal establishment of the CAC and to move with a less formal forum process. After Brian's meetings and the staff meetings are done with regard to the service changes, use those meetings to encourage people to participate as members of an information opinion group that would meet 3 times a year. And we would get through the next 18 months. One of those meetings would focus specifically on disability services. The other meetings would be more broadly discussing all the range of service that potential users might want. We suggested advertising the availability of those forums and those positions, so to speak, on the opinion group. Michelle has drafted an invitation based upon some material that we provided. She sent that along to Bernie.
Yeah, I have that here. I'll pass it along, and if anybody wants that one, they can take it, or I'll send it to everybody later on today.
Yeah, but we should get this information out pretty soon, since the meetings are now underway as well.
And I have to re-verify that we're bringing it up. I don't know that it got brought up down in Georgetown about the possibility of serving on this committee. Did they mention anything about that?
Not
Yeah.
No.
So I gotta make sure that we start mentioning it.
Okay. Well, let's get that communicated. I think that was the intent of the committee, at least, was to go with a less formal route. There's a lot of things in the state of change right now, including the service changes, the AVL, the fixed route. We hope to roll all of that out within the time frame of April 1 into May. Maybe we won't get the fixed route signage, certainly not by then, but we hope to roll that out in the context of then beginning to get our ridership users into the conversation, into the mix, so that 18 months from now, once those changes have stabilized, we then have clear input as to where to proceed at the point in time following.
Well, I'll send that material out, and that material, by the way, I don't know if Michelle's still on the phone, that's her, we sent her a rough draft, she sent us a better draft.
Yeah, she did a good job.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, that's fine, but other people can have their say.
Yep. Well, the only thing we have to be careful about that is that Michelle suggested dates on that, and we need some confirmation that those dates are realistic. We may need to
Yeah.
push those back
Yeah.
a month
Okay.
in the conversation. So Brian, if you could take a look at that, or have your staff.
I'll mail that to you.
Take
I did mail that.
a look at that.
Yeah,
I mailed it.
I have it, I haven't looked at it.
Yeah.
And so, from my recollection, that was the bulk of our conversation. And I don't recall substantive conversation
I
in
will.
other areas.
Yeah, the only thing that I would, I mean, we talked about the AVL update, and I just want to let everybody know that the RFP is at the state.
That's great.
It's under review, and so we'll get that RFP out here as soon as, in short order.
Michelle is on sick leave right now.
Yep.
Yeah, she's on the phone,
Or she's on the phone here now, but,
with her leg up, I presume.
yeah.
Well, in the AVL, I think we're basically looking at going online right around April 1, if God's willing and the creek don't rise.
Yeah, we'll
things
see.
like
April
that.
1.
Do we have to
Pretty
put,
ambitious.
do we
see.
have to put
We'll
a
see.
date on this?
No, I guess at some point we do.
Well, there are
Right now.
changes, the changes don't affect that, so,
No, I know that.
yeah.
I would say if the RFP is at the state, April 1st looks pretty ambitious.
We'll see, we'll keep
I
bugging.
mean, if we have to make a
Squeaky wheel
change
gets
in
the
the
grease.
date. Okay. All right.
always have to take by the end of February if we need to do that.
Oh, for the committee. Yep.
Okay.
Very good, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Finance Committee report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We went over the financials and approved November and December. We looked at the proposed budget, and we also talked about the audit report up to that point. So that is, we'll say, the star item for today.
Yes, I guess I want to say a couple things about the monthly, the board financial report. First of all, beginning with the November report, the budgets are now based on the FY16 revised budget.
The proposed
The
budget.
proposed budget, but we put them in there just so you could see the differences and the variances and how things are trending, and things are trending in a positive direction as it relates to the budget.
The new budget is the long sheet that I gave out,
Yeah, correct.
so you can read it better.
This version is a little bit different. I corrected the formula errors that Mr. Keene
Yeah, he's
caught.
the only guy with a calculator.
I guess that's why we invited him.
We have to take that telephone away from it.
That's right.
I brought my calculator this time.
So, but
I called him up, made
all
sure
that's
he was
straight.
coming to this meeting, so.
all that's straight. So.
Very good, Marvin.
Yeah, very good.
Very good.
So we do have a resolution later on in the meeting to approve that revised budget, but at this point, I think we're in pretty good shape, and it makes sense to go to the 15-month year and change our fiscal year, so.
Well, I think the other thing that was brought out to the finance committee that was, golly, we've been talking about it for years, and it's kind of been a hodgepodge deal. But where we stand on all of the draws that we have out there for all years.
Right, we've added that sheet.
Pardon?
We've added that sheet that
Yes.
shows
Yes, and
where we stand with draws.
I really appreciate from the finance committee, both Ron and your work on that. I know that it was a very, very lengthy, frustrating process. And I know that, getting these closes, trying to go back and make those journal entries and track them down. Look, I've been there, done that, and that's why I don't have any hair.
Well, and that, sir, is an excellent segue into the audit, because I think, as you will see in the audit, or you have seen in the audit, we have a lot of work to do on our draws. I think the audit has, while it probably isn't as pretty as I hoped it would be, I think that the most important parts of the audit, and Dean is here to say a few words and then answer any questions. shoring up our internal controls to make sure that we're dealing with assets better. You know, one of the main missteps in taking on the DART buses was we had this increase in asset, but we didn't put any journal entries in there on where we basically got the money to increase that asset. So there should have been an FTA in-kind revenue, you know, it's not real money, but to put that in. I think the audit helped us, you know, I think when we came out of the final closeout for FY15, we had a negative $900,000 cash position, or not cash position, but what's the term for that, Dave?
Decrease in net position.
Decrease in net position. A lot of that is GASB 68, which you can read to your heart's content in the audit report. But it was also because we made these missteps in how we were dealing with our assets and FTA equity and those types of things. So it's now down to like a negative 600. So, you know, improving our net position by 300,000 is a welcome change, and that was really attributable to the audit. I think we have a lot of work to do on primarily the timeliness of draws. I think that's where we got into a lot of trouble with some of these findings. I think the answer, and Ron has been really on the forefront of kind of thinking about what these improvements are. But there's so much post-allocation of costs after the accounting software that for a person coming in cold to try to understand it, honestly, it took us several weeks to kind of figure out where things were going. And that was because there were certain expenses in the admin department in Sage that were going into Excel and then getting reallocated to, say, maintenance, because it was like maintenance for an administrative vehicle, that type of thing. And so all of those, you know, rearranging the deck chairs was happening in Excel, and we want to move it back into Sage. And our goal is to have all the allocations that we need in Sage, splitting it between transit and paratransit, splitting it between admin, maintenance, and operations, is all going to occur in Sage. We have an update to the software coming. We're going to match it up to a time clock so that labor and payroll will be done basically automatically. And we're going to get all those allocations done within the software so that when we are going for a draw, it's tied to the actual costs for that month rather than a change in year-to-date expenses, which is really the way things were working before. And so I think that'll be a major improvement. We'll get those draws done by the 15th or 16th of the month, every month. And the only allocation that we'll have to do post-Sage will be the urban versus rural. So we'll still have to split it to grants after Sage. And the reason for that is if we have let's say we have a maintenance bill for a vehicle, and so we have that invoice coming in, we pay it. If we want to split it urban-rural, we've got to split that invoice into two accounts, and that just makes for messiness. And so we'll do, you know, the urban-rural split is based on a percentage anyway. It's a real easy calculation, and that's something that will happen out of Sage. So, you know, clearly, more than anything, the audit has given us sort of a clear path to making those corrections and shoring up our internal controls. So I think, did you have a question?
I have two questions.
Okay.
Okay, now question number one, who's gonna handle payroll now?
It's going to go right to Ron.
Okay, and he is going to be totally responsible. Okay, that's a good separation in my opinion. Okay, number two, with regard to the rural allocation, that percentage, does that percentage fluctuate? How often do you visit that number?
Yeah.
And does it, you know, go from 80-20 to 60-40 or something?
Yeah, it's in the like 65-35 range right now.
Okay.
And it is based on hours and miles.
But
operating hours and
how often
miles.
do you?
Well, I think before
Look at
it was
that number.
happening on a monthly basis, and I'm going to get away from that and do an annual change. So we'll run the same percentage annually, and recalculated from annually, which is perfectly within the regs.
Plus our schedule will be more stable.
Well, and that's the main reason why it was being done monthly, is because our schedule, you know, in the summer months, the urban piece was higher.
Exactly.
But now the only thing that's gonna be added in the summer months is the entertainment shuttle. Everything else will be the same all year round. So I don't think that we'll have as much, we'll have the fluctuation in services that will require us to
Okay,
do it any more often than annually.
will the feds in their audit agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll just adjust it once annually. That way it'll sort of expedite the close process
No, I
and
understand.
simplify the
I can
process.
I can understand that, but I'm just concerned if they will accept a static percentile.
I'm sure he did his
They
homework.
will.
I'm sure he did his homework before he did it.
No, they will.
I'm sure he did his homework.
I'm glad that,
What do you think?
Brian was on top of that so that he did check.
Okay.
So we have-
I'm just asking for your
That's
So-
all right. No, that's
so-
good. Better to ask than now.
It's my concern.
That's right. That's
If I have a concern, I'm voicing.
I ain't saying about no concern,
So-
I'm just saying,
So,
man.
there you go, Mickey.
We're good.
Somebody needs to be on top of it.
Okay. that's
So I know that Dean has a few comments that he wants to make about the overall audit. And then I was hoping that we don't have to go through each of the findings, but if you all have any specific questions about a specific finding, it's all open for discussion.
I want to ask you one question before you
Yes, sir.
get into that. On these DART buses, I noticed that we are still using like a board for our destination signs, right by where the bus number would be in the front of the bus, so that people can understand where the bus is going. Are we still gonna have that problem when we get the other 5 plus the 5 that we have?
They have a numeric board on the back that we weren't able to access.
Mhm.
But the front of the bus should have the destination sign working.
Because
So are we sure it was the yellow bus? Because I know we have
Yeah,
some
I-
white buses that have problems with their
This was the
destination
yellow
sign.
bus that had the sign, just like a cardboard, showing where they were going.
I will ask about that. I'm under the impression that those
You
destination
said that
signs.
was a school bus?
Right.
All in the school bus.
Yeah, I'm under the impression that those destination signs were working, so it may have been a problem with one of them one day.
Could have been, could
Yeah.
have been, but, you know.
What are we doing with the back signage then? Are we putting cardboard or something up?
No, man, we don't have them on any of the other buses, so.
I see them buses every day because they pass my house.
um,
And I have never seen what you just said on them buses.
Well, I've seen it.
I've seen it, yeah.
Question.
Well, certainly some of the white
This one
buses.
is in Georgetown, going to Georgetown?
Yeah, that's the 16, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen yellow buses with cardboard instead of a destination sign. I don't know why.
I'm
It
blind.
may have been the same bus
I will
over and
check.
over.
It's just something, sometimes we don't see everything, you know, we see what, certain things.
Your eyes better than mine, that's all.
Well, and keep in mind that despite the fact that they're a lot nicer than some of our
Yeah.
original equipment, they're still
They are.
11 years old. So,
And they're a comfort for the people, so that's what
Right.
important.
Golly, in my opinion, it's a giant,
It is.
giant step forward.
I agree.
They're
right.
nice buses.
So Dean, you want to say a few words about the audit? And then put your flak jacket on?
Happy New Year, Dean. I'm gonna put it in.
Thank you very much for coming down today.
You can-
Well, I
You can even
appreciate
close
the
it, you
opportunity.
can close it, you can close
Okay.
it.
Get in trouble.
No, it's fine.
You see what I think we could push out this road a little bit to the front without being a problem, we all can see.
Watch your fires, I don't know.
Be careful.
Let's go right there, Dean. Let's go right, I'm gonna see you when you talk right there, that's good.
How's
this? Let's go right there. You see, Chuck?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members, thank you for the opportunity once again to present the annual audit to you. As Brian mentioned, I'm not going to go through each statement or schedule. If there's a question about the statement itself or the schedule, please feel free to ask and I'll answer any questions I can. I'm just going to give you a summary. A summary of the results. The process was a little bit extended this year because of a change in key personnel at management level, as we were aware last year. So that created a semi-void in the processing of information used for reporting. We had to expand our procedures to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence for a large majority of the accounts on the balance sheet as well as the income statement. But the process really picked up, I'd say, in late October, early November, with the introduction of Ron, who came on board with tennis shoes, running shoes, and he still hadn't slowed down since that time. So his involvement in correcting the account balances caused by misstatements was really instrumental to achieve the objective, and that's accurate financial reporting. So I just want to say thank you, Ron, for your assistance, because you really contributed toward the scheduling of actual amounts that were originally estimated. And again, the October report, the interim report that you got in October, went from 900,000, I think, and changing that position to around 500 at that time. So we captured a lot of the adjustments through that point in time, but there were additional adjustments in November and December that were made as well. But what we have now is, in our opinion, a purely correct set of financial statements with an unmodified opinion on both the compliance and with rules and regulations of the major programs, as well as your financial statements, including your disclosures. The biggest change this year, as you know, which I think I mentioned last year, was the recording and the effect of GASB statement number 68, which is recording your net pension liability as a result of being a participant in the cost-sharing multiple employee retirement plan. So that required a restatement of your beginning net position of roughly $3,700,000, which has now contributed to a net deficit at the end of 2015 of $1,907,000. For the current year, they have just recently issued the employer allocation schedules. So I gave a copy to Ron, and I would encourage you to go ahead and reflect that change that you will be showing in your 6/30/16 financial statements. It won't have the impact it had on your 15 statements, okay? It may be positive or it may be negative. It depends on the change in fair value of assets, plan assets, compared to the actuarial return on liability. Your proportionate share, of course. So that really impacted your financial position at the end of 15 compared to 14. There were a couple things that caused the major components of the decrease in that position from 14 to 15 of $654,000 was due to the recognition of an impairment loss on 2 international buses that were parked in the year with probably very low fair value attached to those buses because of the condition that they're in, manufacturer defects. So management agreed to recognize the balance of the carrying value, asset cost minus accumulated depreciation through June 15, collectively $271,000. In addition, there was another unrecorded liability due to RTA resulting from the sale of bus 811, which we recognized an impairment, we all recognized an impairment loss last year of $111,000. At the time of the sale, that triggered a liability recognition to RTA because of the remaining federal interest of $88,000. And as we disclosed, our management has disclosed in their response, they're working with the RTA to factor that into a new grant in the current year. And that sounds very positive. So there's not going to likely be a cash outlay to repay that liability. Correct, Brian?
That's correct. And it should be resolved this year. We're waiting for FTA to open up their grant.
When would that be?
March 1st at this point. But I'm not holding my breath on that.
Compared to 2014, there were some very positive variances. Operating expenses went down $294,000. The operating expenses in excess of operating revenues decreased by $207,000, so the loss was lower. budget versus actual, there's a much better comparison, in my opinion, because of the increased efforts in budgeting based on realistic expectations, okay, which is what a budget is designed for, or to incorporate realistic expectations, not estimates that, can't be supported. But there are some positive things going on with the final versus actual comparison as far as the amounts, operating revenues. $363,000, it was lower. I'm sorry, operating expenses was 363 lower than what was budgeted. So there seems to be a more emphasis on monitoring, accounts and balances for control purposes, which is good. And the key thing about a budget, yes, it's an estimate or expectation, but it's a great monitoring tool too, because if you don't implement the controls over expenditures, creating these variances to the budget, and the variances are not timely communicated, it could lead to a lack of control, because again, the budget is sort of a monitoring, tone at the top, look down approach. Yes, you can explain the variances during the year in the meetings, but as far as your financial statements, it shows up as a variance. And unless it's explained in the MD&A, which a lot of people don't read, which is a very useful tool, in my opinion, it requires a lot of work and a lot of information, then no one's going to really understand why there was a variance. So that's one of the reasons why the MD&A is now required. And I think everything in the current year MD&A is
And Dean, if I could just interject here, just to kind of give you all an example, we've had this practice in the past where we put all our non-reimbursable expenses into basically a suspense account. All group them all together, and last year that was what, $114,000 maybe?
correct.
So these are expenses that we cannot go back to FTA or to the state and get reimbursed on, and we weren't really budgeted in the suspense account. They were budgeted in other line items. So we have to set up the chart of accounts so that we're putting those accounts where the money is budgeted for, and we'll have it'll represent. First of all, there'll be better internal controls on how we're handling non-reimbursable expenses, but it'll also help us match up to the budget and we'll have fewer variances. Everybody snowed over?
No, that makes sense.
Okay.
I didn't comprehend, so it don't matter.
Yeah, you're not gonna have miscellaneous.
Explain it to them.
We're not gonna have a miscellaneous category anymore.
That's the bottom line, yeah.
So non-reimbursable admin expense will be somewhere in admin as opposed to in this miscellaneous category.
They'll be placed in the proper area.
Right.
Oh, that's
Right.
good, I will enjoy that.
Yes, I'm sure you will.
Yeah, if you pay a consultant, you should go in consulting services, not miscellaneous.
Right.
And a large part of the current miscellaneous expense dealt with the consultant.
We have unused segments in our GL that we can add additional codes to that will allow us to put the expenses in the proper general ledger account, but then segregate them by a department code, which is the same way we're gonna do the draws. We'll group the department by admin, operating, or preventive maintenance, and just group those respective departments so that we can spit the draw information out. It'll be a push-button process as opposed to spending 2 days traveling through an Excel
Put it
spreadsheet
in the spin
to
cycle.
come up with the same, to come up with the same answer in essence. And the supporting documentation will be much better if it comes directly out of the general ledger software.
Is there a
So
way you
that's
can
where we're going.
put in your proposed budget?
It'll be in there, yeah. It'll be in there,
Okay.
yeah. And it's in there now, but we will update it. Once it's approved by the board, we'll update it to the 15-month budget on a monthly basis. So, you'll have apples to apples in terms of your actual and budget numbers.
Outstanding. Answers my question.
And we'll be able to meet the requirements of the county council and everything, and their guides and rules
Yep.
for the year. That's the most important. That's,
One final comment, the GAO recently, September 14th, wrote revise their internal control standards for governments. Those standards are effective in the current fiscal year 16. And they've come out with a template, if you will, of recommended processes in order to meet those standards. And I gave Ron a copy yesterday. It's called the Green Book. And basically it's a fundamental document that's going to be used by, or should be used by every government. And even nonprofits can use it as well, designing an internal control system to attach principles to the 5 major components. And what it does is, in summary, is expand on documentation and communication a little bit more. It's not that you weren't at the level you need to be, in my opinion, but it just enhances your control system. Part of the emphasis that I want to make is that the involvement of the board is so critical as part of your internal control system. What I'm doing with other clients is I'm helping them design forms and checklists to enhance their internal control reporting and monitoring to those charged with governance, the board of directors, or council, whoever it may be. And that's been very well received. Because basically what it does is it's requiring a little bit more documentation, a little bit higher level of review and summary of the actual detail. And basically, once you follow that process and communicate to the board, and you do your risk assessments and you do your monitoring, and hey, is everything working the way it should be? Yes. Do we need to change anything? No. That's critical, and I think that's something that y'all might want to look at here shortly.
It's called the Green Book, and Ron has it?
Yes.
It's
Yes,
called,
I think major corporations went through the same thing because of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act years ago.
right. This all stems from the revised principles COSO in December of 14, I believe.
Yes, I'm
So-
very aware.
So translation, it helps, it's gonna help us give you information so that you will, it will increase our transparency, I guess is the best way of putting it. But it'll also highlight areas where we've got variances, and you can see,
Well-
you'll be able to see them better and question them.
Dee brought out a very important point. What they're really looking for in that is documentation. That is the key to making sure that you have it. You know, if we have a procedure in place, make sure that that procedure is being read by that group, whoever it is, and, you know, kind of signed off, and that we're doing that.
I'm not
The
clear,
documentation is the key to
Right.
I'm not clear if you're asking the management to give more information to the board, or asking the board to like, do more scrutinizing of management numbers by using this checklist. I'm not sure what.
Well, it's not only financial based, non-financial based as well.
correct.
Okay. What we're trying to do here is to identify a certain number of individuals, i.e. the board of directors of council, to actually review the process of the design and implementation of internal controls. For instance, everybody does a bank reconciliation normally properly, not at all times. Okay, so the bank reconciliation is done by one designated person. It's reviewed by the next level person in management. Okay, and then I would say incorporate another person that has nothing to do with the bank reconciliation itself, and design a checklist or a simple procedure form that lets that person be able to compare A to A. Yes, it was properly reconciled. Yes, it was reviewed. Yes, it was approved. Initial date. I agree with the control, the way it's designed, that we don't need to change anything. That's the kind of communication I think is important.
Well, we're already doing that. That is in place currently.
I just gave that as an example.
No, I understand.
Right. Right.
But we're ahead of you on that one.
Yeah, related to this, page 9 of the packet points out that the board approves both capital and operating budgets. We have the ability during the year to amend it, but the statement is the board did not make any amendments to the budget last year. is that saying we were remiss and should have been more proactive as significant changes came about?
You know, we just have to put that in there because normally if there's an amendment to a budget, it's presented in a separate column.
Okay, but I guess what I'm feeling down, should we have made were there enough significant changes that this board could have and should have made changes?
In light of the actual facts and circumstances, I would probably have recommended a budget amendment.
Okay.
But there's a culture change. When I came onto the board with the prior administration, it was clear they viewed the budget in largely a defensive strategy. Park the money there at the beginning of the year and spend it wherever you want, out of different lines as the year goes along, and reassure people when they raise doubts that the money is there because it's going to be shifted from one place to the next. That's what I used to call living on the float. They had so many empty lines, personnel lines, that they were basically just moving that money where and when they needed to. This is a different administration now, and I honestly don't think the board could have monitored changes in the budget because they were not presented accurate variances back to those budgetary lines. They were just told it would be okay. But that, in my mind, is the big change here.
You're absolutely right.
Is the administration is now treating the budget as a realistic document that must be explained when it is moved away from. And
No.
some level of permission must be sought for that.
I agree. You know, some time ago, you know, when I was originally here, 100 years ago, I wish.
Put that phone outdoors, man.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Get back to what you were saying.
I know.
Some time ago, back in the dark ages.
Back in the, yeah, we hired a group, they came in, I think they charged us $10,000. Anyway, they came out with this $40 million budget deal. I mean, what is happening now at Coast, under Brian and the new board, we're looking at real numbers and we're becoming very active in looking at those numbers. And I think that is, we're taking the taxpayers and our stakeholders' interest at heart and doing the best job we can with those dollars. And looking at how we can spend those dollars and provide good, safe transportation. And you know, you have to realize, golly, in my opinion, Coast has come a long way to, you know, offering transparency and doing a good job, especially with the budget and financial.
Let me piggyback on, I don't want to prolong Dean's time up, you know.
I'll make them stand up there.
But Dean, if I'm correct, Dean, I'm looking at two people here. I'm looking at Ron, who's our financial person. I'm looking at Dean, who's the auditor. So is Ron's responsibility at this point? Is he trying to modify, correct me if I'm wrong, he's trying to modify the system so it could be more accessible for him to come in and do his job? That's what I'm hearing.
But yeah, we're basically tweaking the structure of the chart of accounts, tweaking the general ledger software itself, the accounts, so that they're more of a push-button type of a deal. We don't have to make all these corrections and fixes. And we're also, at the same time, looking at the budget as we're doing that to make sure, you know, in reference to Dr. Sheehan's point, that we're getting these expenses where they're budgeted. And all of that helps give you a more accurate financial report.
That would help him a lot when he comes in.
Oh, yeah, definitely help him, but yeah.
Well, basically, what you're looking at, guys, is to design your system of internal control, and there are three major components now. Where they fine-tune this week, there's always these three components: operations, reporting, and compliance. Okay, reporting is very critical, a third of what the three components. basically, once you close out the year and establish a timeline to do such, a reasonable timeline, it could be August 15th, August 31, to allow, for timing purposes to be reflected, or timing reasons to be reflected in your account balances. And once you close out, if you maintain a system of internal control suitably designed to prevent detective statements during the year, you've already done most of the work. Because when you close out, you should have reliable, accurate financial information that can then be formatted into the way that your financial statements are presented. Basically, what we've seen, and it works for a lot of clients, is that they have their controls in place during the year of financial reporting to identify misstatements, they correct them timely. They have the checklist, they have the approvals, they have the review, they have the oversight agency, designated personnel at the board level, council level, performing that monthly, quarterly. So by the year end, they're ready to produce a trial balance and then prepare the statements with very few, if any, misstatements or adjustments necessary. So basically, you're auditing the financial information that's ready to be presented in the financial statements versus having to create something that should be accurately stated months before. Okay. So the process of correcting the information during the year cannot be overemphasized. So then by year end, you've got all your expenses recorded in the proper period, your revenues are recorded in the proper period. So you've already captured all the financial information that's needed in those account balances, and you feel comfortable they're accurate and complete.
And just to follow up on your question, Mr. James, we do have to go back in FY16 and make a bunch of corrections. So we're gonna go back to July 1st and start this process. So that will take some time.
Yeah, not only the actual, but the budget.
In the
budget
as well.
itself,
Right.
Gonna have to be flip-flopped and lined up so they match. And was this, your statement of budget actual, I spent all last weekend, was part of one of the last schedules of the audit. I thought it would be a piece of cake, and I found the same thing. I printed it out by department, and I was having to make all these pencil corrections back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to get the actual costs to line up with the budget. We had like tires in 2 different major categories and things of that nature that are just, that's, this floundering that Dean's referring to will go away, and we'll correct that on a monthly basis instead of trying to catch it all at year end, which is extremely painful and misleading as well, as far as the interim financial statement. So that is next thing on the docket after this is laid to bed.
Well, Mr. Richardson, let me understand that the audit is unmodified, even though you're seeing some problems with internal controls. And that's correct? Okay. And what you're hearing now about changes to internal controls, is there anything else that the person who sees a lot more agencies than just ours, are we on the right track to internal controls for the next year?
And I don't want to make it sound like there was 12-month forward period where internal controls were not followed. Okay. The primary reason was the misstatements really occurred in the last quarter of the year, because of the change in personnel, which left a void. There were not experienced, skillful staff to assume the same level of responsibilities that were performed by the person who left. Okay, so a lot of that was not resolved. That situation was not resolved until Brian came in, and then later on in October when Brian came in. Okay. So there again, a lot of these adjustments resulted from that period of time and the change in personnel.
And now we're on the road to making all those things, the way they need to be.
I have a similar sort of
Okay,
question.
say that.
Yeah, I have a similar question. Exactly. I think from a board's perspective, one of the worst things that we can get from an audit is findings that roll over from year to year. And I recognize we were talking about apples and oranges with the change in management. But your first 3 findings were rollovers. So I think from our perspective, we want to be assured that those are things that are corrected and we won't see them again next year. So what do you correct?
Well, and we're fully staffed. The document that you all just got has the adjusted managerial responses, so you can read those at your leisure. But We're fully staffed. We have this internal controls consultant coming in to help us deal with functions. Because I think there's gonna be some functions here where we will try to get away from some of these issues where an individual has incompatible, I think the term was incompatible duties, or too many duties. And so we're hopefully gonna get away from that. And we were talking about this last night, it may involve some help from the board. So, and I know you guys are willing to do that, so.
Well, let me emphasize on
Well,
what
wait, were you gonna answer that question before Brian interrupted you? Rolled over. You started to say something and then Brian just,
No, I was
Sorry.
thinking of that, I'm glad you brought that up, because if you have something that was reported in the past, you're trying to avoid having that same situation.
I want to emphasize on what Marvin just said. I don't expect an immediate turnover thing to be bread and butter by next year, because it takes time to come into a new system that's already been, has some problems. But I expect to move forward to correct those problems. But I don't think, I'm not gonna say when you come back here next year, everything gonna be bread and butter laid out and perfect. I don't think that's what you're saying, but I know the goal is to make it better. That's what the goal is, to bring people in place, to line the system where they can get a better accountability for operations and so forth, financial responsibility, budget, which I'm not familiar with all that stuff, but I know we got people in place that can do it. Whatever the board can do to assist with their expertise, and Chuck is a good finance person, Johnson in operations, whatever the person's skill can help on the board would probably be beneficial to you guys. But at the same time, very brief, like Marvin just said, we look for things to be better. But I'm not gonna say next year it's gonna be 100% better. I just think that we just gotta, because you see, we still struggle with some of the same issues we had prior to you coming in with that we hadn't really got rid of yet. And so, and it's gonna take time. So I think in due time, from 3 to 5 years, you might see a complete change, but I don't think we'll do it in 1 year. That's my whole point.
I think too, this is kind of a snapshot in time at June 30th, so a lot of these things have already been rectified, or we're putting things in place to rectify them
And that's what he was
relatively
saying.
quickly. So this was like Brian had 3 weeks of experience, or 3 months or whatever. So you're right, you're absolutely right. So we're
It takes time.
getting there.
I was gonna give him till Monday to get it all done.
Yeah, I appreciate your patience.
Ron,
I'd like to think of it how it's written.
read the book that I left on your shelf.
on the other hand, is,
No.
the problems with audit are a very thin
It's on my
line
desk.
with internal controls. and
Front
That's
side.
something
I
we can
wrote
fix.
part of it.
Right,
Yes, sir.
right,
Oh, yeah.
right.
We don't have
Let's
problems all
Let's
over the
not get
place.
all blown out of
Yeah, I think we have a problem that we can
out of
fix.
out of the bubble here.
They're simple solutions.
Right.
So, when this is presented to county council, will the auditor be there? Will Chuck be there? Someone should be there to answer some of these questions should they come up. I don't think it's just your responsibility, Brian.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, the next step is to get the final, assuming a positive decision from the board here later on to this morning. We'll get the final and deliver it to the county. And then, certainly, any support I get. I mean, I don't know that we'll need Dean necessarily, but certainly getting some help from finance committee would help. But certainly Ron and I can kind of tag team on, why certain things are.
And you have a finance committee that's been through this.
Mhm.
I mean, in their jobs, previous to all this. I
Are you
mean,
gonna
it's
get-
not that they're ignorant of what's going on.
Are you gonna give this preliminary budget audit to the committee this afternoon?
I sent, no, I don't think so. I sent basically a summary of what the findings were to Diana and Justin Powell, and invited them to the meeting, and said that we'd get it to them as soon as it was finalized. And I believe it'll be finalized before, assuming a vote, obviously I don't wanna, it's finalized before the 31st, so we can get it to them.
I have one other question. Is there any items that we need to be aware of?
Oh, please hope, not to my knowledge. Just.
Were you asking Dean, or were you asking
Yes,
us?
no, I'm asking Dean, yes.
Sorry, okay, can you?
All right, can you be more specific?
Well, no, it's just a generalized question.
You have to guess it.
Nothing that
I don't know if I'm gonna buy any more Explorers.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
That was for Dr. Sheehan.
Maybe you must have buy one.
No, I caught the comment about the Explorers.
I will.
That was a mistake.
Obviously, I guess really two main things that, that still are unresolved as of this audit, and that is, we do have this, issue with the dates of the acquisition of the Explorers.
I
And
know
in
about that.
In the end of the contract that they were funded under,
Yes,
that we need to resolve with the
I
state.
am very familiar with
And then we have the issue of the internationals, which is, those were 100% buses. So the remaining value is 100% federal equity. And so we've got to move forward on the lemon law issues with those and try to get that resolved this year.
Okay, we are completely aware
And you all
of
have been informed
both.
on those, yes.
I agree. I know more about those than I really want.
Dean, it's
But those are the, do you agree? Those are the, okay.
correct.
And I'm just trying to get an outside opinion and a new, fresh,
Understood?
pair of eyes on the situation.
So Dean, based on what I'm understanding, you said the unqualified or unmodified opinion, unqualified opinion?
That's good.
That's
So-
a
It's
positive
good,
opinion.
it's a positive
That's good.
opinion.
No, I was just asking a question, I'm just saying, I'm asking what do you mean by
Right,
that?
basically the three, it's unmodified, what used to be unqualified, which is a clean opinion.
Right.
That, based on the audit evidence we obtained.
I'm trying to make sure I understand the terminology here, that's
Sure.
all, what you speaking
When
in
you
this.
issue an unmodified opinion, you
Right.
say that you have obtained.
I know these people on these boards are the council know that, but I don't know it, so just make sure.
That you've obtained enough evidence to feel comfortable in issuing an opinion that the balances are quote materially correct, with reasonable assurance, not absolute. So if something's been stated like 20,000, I don't care. Why? Because it falls below our materiality level for audit purposes. I'll mention this, if we found that something, $1,000 is missing, okay, or unaccounted for, not missing, unaccounted for, would I be concerned if I tested controllers and said, well, that was an isolated thing, it was just a misposting or something? No, because $1,000 is way below our radar. That's management's responsibility, designed those controllers to detect that $1,000, not ours. So with reasonable assurance, the balances are materially correct. That's what an unmodified opinion represents, okay? And you got an adverse opinion, which basically says that these balances presented to you, in our opinion, are not materially correct. And then you've got a disclaimer of opinion, which means we don't issue an opinion because we have no idea. Is that right or
I'm
wrong?
trying to figure what it meant, that's all.
So I think, I met Mr. Brian last night when we were discussing their responses. I said, well, if we had to issue an opinion in October, when y'all were presenting your first financial statement, I'd have to issue a disclaimer. I don't know if they're right or wrong. I don't know. Because at that point, we had made a significant number of adjustments.
So it wouldn't be advisable to go in front of council with an adverse,
No.
Well, the other thing that I think the board should look at is during your audit, or because of your audit, we will say, and we've been talking about this for a couple of years, is to put in line where we're at with regard to all federal grants. And Ron and Brian worked a long time, I know, on getting all that data together and presenting it to us in a spreadsheet. And we will be getting updates on the final numbers for federal grants, we'll say, when we get our monthly financials. Golly, you just don't know how long, I've been talking about that. It's now come to fruition.
And
Thank you.
Those are the type of things that the board members should asked for.
Well, we
Well,
have.
we,
You have to
And
understand.
then given the information.
And I want to thank Dean for making us do that, this exercise of, you know, going through and tying our expenses. It was brutal to say the least. But I am now 100% assured that we were underdrawn on all our grants. We certainly weren't overdrawn. I mentioned this in my email. And, you know, it also kind of highlights doing a little better job. And some of the reason for the underdraw on you know, when you're comparing it to a max draw, the max draw is just based on expenses. We didn't have the grant dollars in the grant to get to a max draw. So that's one reason for being underdraw. But we were underdrawn during the course of the year significantly, and we got to avoid that in the future because we're just wasting local dollars when we do that. And so, you know, that's why in the budget for FY16 we had the strategy of going after 80% money quicker. In fact, you know, earlier in the year, because it's going to be a more efficient way to pull in those funds. You know, we're overmatching with local dollars regardless, but that's okay.
You have an excess of
Well, no, I mean the way the numbers work out.
no,
you
I
know,
understand what you mean with the percentage, but like, we're getting more aggressive. But as we get more aggressive, we're all on the Fed side over here.
Right.
We're also gonna have to get more aggressive on the local match in the grants over here.
Right.
Therefore, that's what, this morning, you know, when we signed with Surfside, North Myrtle Beach, et cetera, those dudes gotta kick in, is the point.
Right.
Well,
Well, it's certainly
or
from-
we're not gonna be able to get the federal matches over here.
And one of them is your town, Surfside.
And we're gonna
I don't
try to avoid having $189,000 left over at the end of the year like we did in FY15. We want to have a little bit left over, but not that much.
Yes, we need a reserve.
It's not a reserve, though.
No, I was just talking about that's how much money we
If
have
it's
left over.
and you can't tap it later, it's not a reserve. It is, spend it down to $2 for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And get, you know, obviously get the most for that dollar.
Yeah.
No, you're right, you know,
We've
it's one of these
lost money.
deals,
We've lost
use it
money
or lose
for
it.
years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
Dean, you might know, or I'll tell you what I think. I think we have a very strong financial committee right now. And I think it's gonna really be valuable to us, and it already is.
Except for Chuck.
No, Chuck is the chairman, and I think.
and you know why, and you know why, because they demand answers, they
Yeah,
demand
I think it's a
answers.
strong committee.
Right.
Yep. We gotta be prepared.
Well, I
right
think
now.
that's gonna create
That's
an
right.
incremental level that's gonna be very valuable to you,
I
and
think
to
so, too.
prevent mistakes
Needs to be a
from not
apparatus.
being detected. You try and prevent mistakes, first of all, but then you should always try and have controls in place to detect.
Right.
And I said, Ron, you know, when y'all presented preliminary information for June 15th, and we had a net loss on the disposal of assets of 100 and something thousand. Okay, why didn't the red flags just shoot all over the ring, you know? Well, last year we picked up 111,000 in impairment loss. What did we sell this year that generated another 100 and something thousand dollar loss? Oh, well, you know what? After discovery, time of discovery, we realized that we had reported the same loss in the current year. So we reported the same loss twice. Things like this need to spark
Jump
conversation.
off the page.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
demand a little bit more, well, first of all, it should be prevented. But if it comes to the point where y'all are looking at a set of financial statements and something doesn't look right, ask the question. And we're talking about big items here, you know, the
Kind of like
kitchen, big
explorers.
Couldn't resist. Couldn't resist.
Wait a minute, I know that we recently acquired 5 buses, but our assets are not changed by the value that we were told at the time of acquiring. And where's the in-kind revenue? Because my understanding is we only paid $29,000 upfront. But we're getting buses that are valued at $174. Where's the other side of the equation? Oh, we're missing in-kind revenue, aren't we? And that was $144,000. So these things, you know, this is part of the analytical process. Does it make sense from this point in time to this point in time? And is it reasonable, and does it meet expectations? Okay. So more board involvement, more committee involvement, critiquing the numbers as presented, and you're gonna get more transparency now So, you know, by the year end, you should feel good and comfortable that if everything's been done properly, your balances are a little bit more accurate and complete than they have been in the last year.
And Dean, I got one question. First of all, I'd like to commend the finance committee for a fabulous job. Because I'm not a financial person, I do appreciate their expertise. You mentioned, for example, there was $1,000 missing or something. Management would have to be, well, not would have to be, but that would be something that would be under their control, where that $1,000 going at.
That would be their responsibility.
Okay. What would be the limit as to go beyond management said, if it's 2,000, 3,000? I mean, is there any stipulations on that? Not really?
No, I mean, RTs have their own defined acceptance levels. If somebody's out $1, if something's out $1, they don't spend hours and hours looking for it.
Okay.
If something's out, or an account balance is out 250, it's reconciled down to 250, they don't spend time and resources looking for it. Whereas others will look for $10. We've got to find that $10. Where is it? Is it in another account? Or is it just simply, you know, for instance, was it not deposited? But the point I was making is, from an audit standpoint, an issue in my opinion, with reasonable assurance balances are materially correct. They're not perfect, but materially correct. And materiality varies by client, by year. So we use professional practices and professional standards to come up with what we consider to be material. Anything over materiality level, we have to look at more. Okay, that's part of the risk assessment that we use. Where are the high risk areas? I can tell you now, I didn't spend much time on cash other than to improve the reconciliation, because I know that there's a low risk area. And I know this from past experience. And who does the reconciliation? I know there are proper controls in order to prevent something from happening that would materially affect your cash balance being reported incorrectly.
And another question, before I forget about it, because what I'm trying to do now is make sure I, as a board member, understand as well those who may not understand. When the grant money comes in to this company, and it's being dispersed to different projects, they come under the audit too, right? Okay. So I know it's a financial person's responsibility. If it's been targeted for specific purpose, and is there a time frame as to how long it should take for that money to be? I'm talking wrong. If you got grant money for shelter, for example, is there a time frame as to how long it's going to take? Because when you come in, you're going to say, well, they got X amount of dollars for.
Like a period of performance. Yeah, there is. It's spelled out in the grant agreement itself.
Okay. So when you come in, he come in every year, he's going to look at it and see how it's being spent.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
the way FTA works, it's all done on a reimbursement. So we have to spend the money first, and then we get reimbursement at a certain percentage, depending on what type of expense it is. So that's how you tie what you bought with the dollars to the grant money.
So, in other words, I guess.
So that's all done in arrears. And that's been our problem, is that we've been waiting too long to apply for that reimbursement. You know, we may have an expense in April and we don't draw it on until August or whatever. That's why we're getting into trouble. So yeah, we're gonna be Johnny on the spot with those and actually try to tie those draws to expenses on the 15th of the month in the subsequent month, after the month that it's in. And the only exception to that is major capital expenses. FTA has a provision where you can get the money ahead of time, but then you have 3 days to spend it. You have to give it to the vendor.
When you buy a bus for $150,000, you gotta pay for it within 3 days.
Or 420.
I guess at the same time, I guess it's going back to the finance committee for the finance committee, and I'm gonna get a clarification on this as well, because finance committee, we see we had a strong finance committee as far as observance, make sure everything is done well, and you are the chair. In your assessment, you look at the grant money as to where it's going, the committee itself, the time frame that should have been done, and it's not been done in a certain time frame. Do the committee look at all that stuff too?
Yes.
How does that work?
Okay, but it works the same way of other grants, if you're familiar with them, through the state of South Carolina. it's the same, it's no different. If you're familiar with that system, you know, or DOT or anybody else, you know, it works the same way.
Okay.
You just have the money and then you have to spend it. When you spend it, then you draw down on your grant. That's all.
We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Me and you get together on that. I want to talk to you about some stuff on that. I don't want to prolong the meeting. Thank you, Dean.
Well, part of the process too is to make sure that whoever's designated in the current year with greater grant management responsibilities needs to communicate the same information that's coming from Ron, okay? In other words, you've got 14 compliance requirements in total. Now, in the current year, it's reduced because you are under the revised. Sir, I'm not gonna get into that because.
Please don't.
Okay. But prior, under OEB 133, which is what y'all being reported on final, this is the final year too, by the way. You have 14 compliance requirements. Not all of them apply to every grant or program. But what you can do to overcome any deficiency, if you will, or strengthen your internal control, as part of the finance committee gathering to review compliance requirements, to make sure that we're up to date on all of our compliance requirements. And there's a checklist that I've offered that can be used to document that. Allowable cost, cash management are examples.
Is that in the green book that Ron has?
You know, the Green Book supports that, but the checklist that I have or have given to the coast in the past is like a summary of all 14 compliance requirements.
Okay.
Identifies by CFDA number, the program name, the budget expenditures, and then who's responsible for cash management, allowable activities, program relocation or relocation assistance, Davis-Bacon, things like that. So it kind of makes someone with a little bit more responsibility be transparent in the communication each month and say, yes, we have met this compliance requirement. Oh, how do we do that? Here's the proof. Okay. In other words, if we timely file our reports or whatever, as an example, within 30 days at the end of the quarter, yes, here's a copy of the report. Those types of compliance requirements, I think, need to be communicated as a follow-up or a part of, an integral part of your monthly discussion of financial data as well.
And these compliance requirements are for grants, is that what a specific grant thing?
It's what you as a body are required to meet in accordance with OEB 133. You're receiving these federal funds and then you're required to establish, document, and prove that you met the requirements based on the actions that you took and actions that.
Okay,
Brian,
Brian
our grants manager, that right?
would then
Kevin right now, Kevin's.
you would then appoint somebody to be in charge of such. Who's gonna be?
That'd be a grant administrator, so that's right, Kevin.
Okay.
Did you say OMB 33, this is last report?
Reporting under OEB 133.
What replaced
Uniform Administrative Cost Department.
more onerous
Go on.
document?
Well, there's some streamlining and some additional requirements, I think, but. We got a big dose of what all that meant at FMO training last fall. You know, the differences between the two circulars and the new circular doesn't go into effect until we open up a grant this year. So all the grants we have open right now are under the old circular. So, and we'll have as many as 4 or 5 grants opening up, you know, as soon as March. That'll be following this new circular.
Well, the basic underlying principles and stuff, it's mostly semantics and, you know, the procedures.
It's no more onerous though.
No, not terribly. I don't think so. Like, it's kind of a trade-out. Pick some up, you lose a few.
There's a lot of emphasis on procurement, which I think your procurement system here is at the top level, the record. And then there's more emphasis in cost to make sure that the entities are preventing abuse, waste, and fraud. Waste and abuse is what they're really going after now. And that deals with the cost principles. Is it allowable cost, allowable activity? Is it reasonable? Is it necessary? and then that introduces the area of pyramid. Have you got the lowest price possible? That's when the quality product you receive. So those go hand in hand. That's the major emphasis of change that I've been told in seminars. Yeah, you still have to do your due diligence with the other areas as well, cost to prevent, cost requirements to prevent, cost controls to prevent integrity, abuse, waste, and fraud.
Any more questions for Dean?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So we will see you again then next year?
What's the schedule like next week?
You started up by 16 already.
Yeah, then we're gonna look at your tax return.
So that was the finance committee report.
Yeah,
Good.
okay.
That's a good one, Chuck.
Brian, as you go into the general manager's report, one item that I did overlook, maybe out of anesthesia or what, but the publicity materials for the paratransit, that plan that was proposed, if you could mention that.
Oh, okay.
As it comes around as well. That was the other item we discussed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I have a, are you gonna ask us to approve this
In about
today?
5 minutes.
What if we haven't read everything because of the?
Well, it was sent to us.
You got it last night.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, well, and I apologize for that. I mean, I didn't have a ton of control on that. If you want to reserve the vote, and we'd have to do it by phone later in the week or something.
I'd rather vote and get it done with.
Yeah, me too.
So, well, think about that. Let me, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and do the general manager's report.
We
It
want
was,
to take 5 minutes?
Yeah, fine.
if you'd like, okay.
So we got the general manager's report at
Hey,
this time?
I'm so glad you introduced yourself.
All right.
All right, well, because of the other items on the agenda, I was going to keep my general manager's report to about 3 minutes, but it's going to be 5 minutes now because you gave me another item.
When I forgot, yeah.
In the PAC committee meeting, we did talk about a little video / presentation on information about our parent transit system. This was something that Dr. Sheehan asked us to kind of look into, and we delivered basically a plan for the development of that piece at the committee meeting, and it starts in earnest here really quick. It's gonna be looking at data collection, and then we're gonna interview a couple of drivers as well as a couple of customers, and just talk about the importance of that service and have that piece for whomever. I mean, I think it would.
That was only 40 seconds, so.
If it's developed properly, I think it'll be really pertinent to a number of different audiences.
There's a timetable, which I don't have with me, but.
Yeah, but I think we were looking at having that kind of wrapped up in maybe May,
How many-
middle of May.
How many paratransit buses do you have?
6.
6? Wow. Aren't you supposed to get 2 new ones?
We actually are going to replace at least 5 of them this year
With new ones?
with new ones. They're all spent. They're all reached their useful life.
But Bernie came up with a very, very valid, very good point. You know, with expanding and going some different areas, you are absolutely correct. You're gonna be going within 3/4 of a mile of some areas that have a bunch of retirees, we'll say.
Yep.
Yeah.
I could see your especially if you change some routes going down south in some other areas.
Yeah, certainly like if we go into Sacristy and in those areas. And
Right, I
we
could
really need to
see-
think about the
Right.
impact of
I
paratransit
was
with those
asked-
route
I
committees.
was
Exactly, I
asked
could see
yesterday
they're
by the
doing
A lot
a
of-
giant leap in ridership.
Yep.
And a leap in expense to us.
How
Exactly.
quick
Well, don't we get, federal funds for that?
Well, we get federal funds,
Not enough.
yeah. Those rides are costing us
I know they're-
$70, $80.
I was
I
asked
agree they're
yesterday by
expensive.
the mayor of North Myrtle Beach, she said she knew
Yeah,
somebody
I
who
think you might be
needed
right.
paratransit. And I said, you have to have a fixed street.
Well, if you send somebody left it,
I said,
Well, you know,
You know,
I
has-
think in future
Like
expansion.
me.
she's
you
never
know,
asked me that.
I went every
before.
day, you know, to
Maybe
treatment.
she's getting
Yeah,
close
yeah,
off.
and the need is
You
there.
all
no
remember
question.
you all remember the Cats Plus service,
Yeah.
and I think at some point we need to maybe not get back to that same level, but
But that
start
used to
moving
go
back
up, there.
towards
Yeah,
that.
that used to go up there, right.
Right. So, other things here on the agenda, we already talked about the State of Coast, meeting here with the drivers. I thought it went really well. I had some attendance by board members, and I don't know if you all wanna say anything about how that went or anything like that, but, I think our, authority is a reasonable place to work, and, you know, the morale of our employees is definitely improved.
Our
Over time.
comment, I was there, I first one I ever been to, obviously, but I was surprised there was not a reluctance at all to attendees. Yes, but they spoke, they got to sit back here because of a mandatory meeting. They engaged,
Wow.
and my sense was the same thing, morale was very high, very high.
Would have liked to have heard a few more people other than Mr. Smalls, but,
Yeah, and Mr. Johnson.
yeah, he's a terrific employee and a really good driver, so, it's fun to kind of horse around with him a little bit, but
I was on the way over here, but I had bad sinus problems, so, and I really wanted
there'll
to
be others. We're gonna try to do them quarterly.
I wish I'd have made it, but,
It was difficult for board members, it's difficult for me because I'd have to come back that night.
Yeah, we'll try not to schedule it that way.
Yeah.
I got a taxi, Kev. I couldn't pick you up. I got a taxi. I got a meter.
Oh, do you? Well,
I had a long day.
I got this
Well,
in the mail after
you
it
get
was
to read the
over.
end of your
I
day.
got this in the mail, said, this guy is good.
Mr. Lazar came
I
and
can
spent the day with
shortcut all
us
that,
that
I know Mr. Smalls.
Well, I think the drivers were disappointed there was not a raise on the table.
But they
That's what I
didn't,
had.
but we gave them one
That's the
Well,
2 years ago,
well-
a year and a half.
a year and a half ago.
And,
Right,
you know, I made a point of talking about that we have raises in the budget.
Right.
I wanna wait till June 1st timeframe for two reasons. One, I wanna track the budget for a couple of months so that, you know, I can ensure that we have that money in the budget. And two, I wanna give them some time. We've talked as, you know, the managerial staff has talked about doing both cost of living as well as merit-based raises. And so that was one time they did kind of clam up, was, you know, what should a merit raise be based on?
Well, when you gave an example, absenteeism, then
Right.
what lights, okay, we're not
Right.
gonna beat up because I drive more miles than he does and things like that.
Yes, so, you know, I think Doug and Ron and other people who are supervisors in this organization will now be having individual, or in the case of Doug, we'll try to group drivers together and talk about that, and then give them a few months to kind of work on their track record, and I didn't get, you know, there might have been disappointment, but I did not get the sense that they were, you know, upset about it, you know.
Brian, I'd like to know what the differential is between your thoughts about cost of living and merit. Because if merit is so low that there's more time and effort put into trying to figure it out and administer that, I mean, is it 3% and 1%? Or
Yeah.
2.5%? I mean, we haven't heard that answer.
You know, I need to get back to it. I mean, it's not fully thought out,
Okay.
but I need to think it out and.
Yeah,
and
let's
talk
think
with
it out
the- talk
before
with
you,
managers about
See
it.
where the
before you
money is.
commit on.
Right.
I've just seen some people get so miserly angry over such a small amount of money, if that's what in fact the merit is, or if the cost of living is less than CPI or you know, whatever you
Right.
use for that. So-
Right.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You verbally, you said June 1st a moment ago here. At evening, I think you said May or June.
I said late May or early June.
Okay, right.
You know,
Yes.
that's kind of the target
Yeah.
date.
Okay.
I also talked to them about a safety program. We're gonna start awarding safe driving with a patch that can be worn on their uniform. We're gonna try to play it off of the sun in our logo. We haven't really set the metrics for that yet, but that was something that I wanted to start, and maybe even retroactively awarding safe driving. We're also gonna have
Oh, that's
drivers
good.
representation on the safety committee, so there will be drivers involved in the conversations on reviewing accidents and incidents and complaints and those types of
In
things.
China, most of the bus drivers are members of the Communist Party. Most of the Chinese are not. Most who are the bus drivers have this big red sash.
Yeah, in order to have
They
their
wear.
jobs.
It's kind of how you know them.
Right. We talked about service improvements in the service committee discussion, so I only have two more items. One, DART buses, next 5 arrive on February 12th. We've got our paperwork in session. We're gonna get out there on the 10th. It's right after the committee meetings. Our group is flying out. And we'll be back on Friday the 12th with 5 more DART buses. We got our statement for our CD. We made about $1.85 in interest.
Here's $5,000.
On my $5,000.
That's a lot of money, man.
But we did make another deposit, and there's now $25,000 in that account. So that is the budgeted amount, and
I have a
and we may
question.
try to put more in there later on in the year.
Or you know, we can buy a building.
Well, didn't you say the other day, with regard to one of these draws, that you would be able to put that into the reserve?
No, but I think if we're able to get any increase in funding, it will be my goal to accelerate the development, adding up the O&M reserve. I remember talking about it in that context. I think, we got our checks from our local governments, we're strong cash-wise, we got, the cash to go get the buses and all that stuff. And so it just made sense to Ron and me to go ahead and put the additional 20 that were budgeted to put into the CD now. While we have it, maybe we get another $1.85 out of it. I want to get interest revenue line item in the budget for my
The way
Well, it's a good start.
and that's all it is intended to be,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
start. And like I said, if we, mind our pennies the rest of the way, the year we'll put more in there.
You get your playground
Yeah,
set
the way
built?
Conway Bank.
It's halfway there.
Only halfway?
I've spent about seven
Poor
hours.
kids hanging off the edge of a halfway building.
They have a deck. They have a deck and
You don't have
a rock
nothing in
wall.
the backyard, do you?
No, I'll hopefully finish it this weekend.
Supposed to rain. Watch out.
Yeah. Saturday,
Well,
Sunday
he
would be
can work
okay.
in the rain. He
Our
can work.
resident economist can tell us a great investment. It's gonna have a phenomenal return. I think that's what we should do.
Does it make any difference what bank you have?
Who's our resident economist?
I don't think so.
Well, you
Savings accounts and CDs, they just don't, it's like 0.15% interest or
Well, what's your
whatever
pick
it
of the
is.
day then?
That may change.
Some credit union carry at 1 point something,
We could put it in a
I made money
longer
yesterday.
note, but I think
Yeah, I was-
the 7-day note actually made better interest because it was accruing.
Plus, you can't, if you get
More
it back, you have
often.
to pay a penalty and you'll lose that.
Right, yeah, we don't have the liquidity of it.
$1.85 or whatever.
So,
The thing is, we're putting money away,
We're socking it
whether
away.
you're making anything on it or not, at least it's there.
yep. So that concludes the manager's report. That was way longer than 5 minutes. I apologize.
It was so interesting.
Brian,
Gets the interesting.
one
Yes,
last
sir.
question, do you have a safety person now, the EO, we call it EO? Oh,
Yes, and I actually forgot to mention the EEO. That document is in pieces. We've got some new regs that need to be worked into it for FY15, so that, we'll come back to you in February with that EEO document and that EEO program. But yes, we're gonna have, we'll forward the new org chart to the board. Lynette, if you could take care of that. And Kevin,
I got another request.
and I'll send you the letter to Myrtle Beach.
I got a request.
So let me finish answering this question here. EEO program coordinator will be Erica Hill, and then the DBE liaison and Title VI coordinator will be Kevin. And those positions were selected primarily because in the org chart it is required that they report to me only on those items. So we're culling them out in the org chart and it says reporting directly to CEO, and that's just a requirement for
What's
those.
DVD again?
disadvantaged business enterprise. And, you know, it makes total sense for the procurement person to be that. Title VI could really be anyone, and EEO has to be anybody that's not in HR.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm happy about those choices. I think from a functional perspective, they have to, you know, this is not a huge time commitment necessarily. I mean, it's just staying on top of the regs and updating the plan
Who
every 3
handles
years.
the MBE?
I'm sorry?
Who handles
The DBE?
I'm
It
sorry.
includes MBE.
The MBE, I wonder where that one come from.
That's Kevin,
DBE.
procurement
Okay.
officer.
He does that also?
Yes. And so you have the new report, the new programs for
Yes, I
those.
saw the
And that
flow
stands right
chart.
that he should do it, because when
He's
he
procurement.
takes things out, you know, he'll know.
Is the EEO responsible for civil rights issues and for harassment issues?
Yes.
And all that kind of stuff? Okay.
Yes.
And a lot of that is Title VI stuff.
Is it, we deal with it in higher ed, I think it's Title IX, a different title, but.
Well, no, the two different, the Title VI is of the Civil Rights Act, and that is that's service related, and it's minorities, low income, and the, you know, and certain populations, and it's for our service. So is our service being provided such that we're not putting any undue burdens on those populations?
On the clients.
On
yeah.
clients. EEO is strictly employment.
Okay.
It's employees.
Okay.
We've tried in the past to get disability, and you know, and whatever it's called, EEO or whatever, and there weren't enough people signed up for them. They haven't, you know, in the area to have them work for us and do, you know, do
Oh, I see.
projects and
DBE.
different things.
That
Right.
DBE.
DBE, right. They, and there was a problem with they didn't want to fill out all the paperwork and things like that. That's what we heard here, you know.
Well,
We've
and
used DVDs
Yeah.
Yeah,
for
we-
various projects
We have.
here at Coast.
Well, we
we have a
have,
very-
we use.
The railing,
Railings and things, yeah,
in
but,
the garage.
yeah.
Right, that will have to-
We have a very low goal, and it would be nice to get that goal a little bit higher, but I
Yeah.
think of my primary reason for the low goal is because of the lack of vendors.
That's right.
Just like- I will tell you that over Martin Luther King weekend, I did attend this seminar, you know, Brown Bagger there on Saturday, that they hosted where it was hosted by the city of Myrtle Beach, and they had the airport and SCDOT and a number of other governmental agencies there talking about how to contract with them. And so when or actually I guess when the airport talked about SCIBO, which is the South Carolina Business Opportunities, and all of the paperwork that goes into registering as a DBE, I made a point to say, from Coast RTA, we follow the same regs and use the same certification process that the airport does. I do have a number of contracting opportunities coming up in calendar year 16.
Right.
That's a good idea, because if you've
So-
already done it for the airport,
Yeah.
Coast RTA.
Yes,
Right.
it all works out. So I made a point of stepping up and telling those individuals, I wasn't really sure of what the vendors were, but I did have a few people come up to me afterwards, and I think we're probably due for another vendor seminar. We're willing to
Well-
invite DBEs in.
I ran the brown bag for a number of years. We tried desperately with the guy that was the former chairman of the,
Fran Logan.
no, Howard Barnhart. He was the guy that was ramrodding through county council and the contractor. We tried desperately to get some DBEs involved.
Well, and
We
that's,
never did.
that's what the, that's what our vendor seminar would be for. We've done them in the
I'm just
past.
saying that was the way the audit.
And we just, the best we can do is keep doing them and inviting people and letting people know, what kind of contracting opportunities are coming up. So, I think the bus stop identification project that we have coming up is a really good opportunity
Oh,
for
I
a local
agree.
DBE to help do the actual construction of those sites and
I
things like
agree.
that.
And
So I'll
can't we-
really try to push for that.
When we contract with someone who's not a DBE, can't we require in the contract that they sub certain?
And we do.
amount? Do we?
Yes.
We have it, but it's only 1% is our goal.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to,
Are you meeting
How
it?
much do you think?
we did meet it in FY15.
How much do you think the bus stop contract will be? Any
250,000.
Oh, that big? That's gonna be,
325 bus
It
stops.
better not be more.
And that won't be all of them.
but that's gonna be a horrendous task.
It's gonna be a tough one.
It has been for the last 31 years.
I'm not talking about poking a pole in the ground with, I'm talking about getting the right of way, et cetera.
Right.
God, that's
Yeah.
gonna be.
Which
Takes forever.
Which is
Takes
exactly
forever.
why we want to do a turnkey operation and give that all to the consultant and get them to do as many as they can. Maybe it'll be more than 325, maybe it'll be a little less than 325, but that will be a multi-year deal, and we'll have to follow it up with another deal to get the entire system set up. And then any sort of expansion will require a similar piece of work to make sure that our routes
An
have those.
assigned timeframe when it would be done.
And we'll get lots of ancillary pieces out of it. We'll get a database that's got, location and, if we start putting benches or shelters out there, it'll have, all the street furniture out there and those types of things, and just so we can stay on top of all of that.
Do we have bike racks on any of our buses?
Yes, oh,
All of
yes.
everybody.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the problem with that is there's only 2 slots.
Is there
Only
any way,
bikes are allowed, yeah.
And
Have
we
you
run
ridden on any of our
into
buses?
problems with
I
that.
have, but I have not paid attention to the front. I did.
Oh, well, get your
is there any way we
bicycle
could get
next
part of the
Yeah.
stop
I'll be the third
that
bike.
from the shelter project?
No.
Because they had some nice, okay. They had
No,
benches
we've
where-
got,
They had some nice, benches and
we got
garbage cans and all that, they were really nice.
Well, one of the nice thing about defining stops is that we can start using a data-driven process to establish which locations have a threshold of ridership to where it needs a shelter, rather than sort of placing them by planning acumen, if you will.
But we
so-
can't get any of that stuff, buy it back at any,
What's the date for the next shelter, the shelter that opens?
February 6th, I believe, so that's that Super Bowl Saturday,
In Georgetown?
day before the Super Bowl.
You want us to come?
Why not?
I don't know if you want.
Yeah, we're gonna go out there and stand over them and make sure it gets done. I don't know if I wanna do that.
Well, maybe not.
It's a volunteer effort, it's a
So if you go
volunteer
there, you're
effort,
a
and I
volunteer.
think we just let them do it. and
Okay.
Maybe we do a ribbon cutting the next week or something.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
We all take a bus down.
yeah.
Maybe take some coffee and donuts down to the ridership and say, hey, this finally happened, something like
Down to the
that.
volunteers.
Right.
And then after that, do we have a commitment of Myrtle Beach one?
They're started on that process. I need to follow up with Brian Stewart on where they are on that. The location's kind of tied to our route improvements. So,
We're gonna put in your tombstone, well, we're started on it.
the program has been initiated.
Oh my God, he's got you buried already.
well, on yours,
We're putting enough stress
Finish
on
your
it.
time up on the boards.
It's
I don't know. At my rate, it could be pretty quick.
I think
but
the
you have to
kids,
understand, on
PlayState's got a better
Rob's,
chance of
Rob's,
that.
we're gonna put a hubcap for one of the floors.
Oh, Brian, you finished yet?
I'm finished.
But Chair, let me throw a comment, cause I gotta leave.
Well, we're all trying to get,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead.
Let me throw a comment, and I always been pondering this, and I'm gonna keep on pondering this. If we can, this evening, cause I talked to you about it, not really a forum, but, not really a summit, but a forum. I am really hyped on this, coming together with the business community, sitting down and getting the public out and discussing, some of the things that you're doing now, maybe in April or maybe sometime after the Black Week, all that kind of stuff. And I really like to see this happen with the business community coming together, and I think Brian could go in front of them and the board could be there present. That we could pound them. I think we need to be more publicized, and if they want to do this, let me know next meeting, and I'll try to work on setting up a time with Brad and the chamber so we can get some publicity out of this thing.
If we roll out the ABL at that meeting, that would be really perceived.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That might push it to May, but
Right.
that'll be a good outcome, because I think a lot of those business people can appreciate
An app.
the value of the technology.
Like I say, the next meeting, if you want to do it next meeting, let me know next meeting, I can try to get it set up, but that's something to think about. I gotta pick my truck up, excuse me.
We got a vote, don't we?
Yes.
Yes, we
Oh, we
got
got
two
a vote.
votes. We got two
Oh,
votes.
Okay,
If you
we
could
got
hang out for
approval
5
of
minutes.
resolutions?
Lunch.
Oh, lunch. All right. What about lunch?
Waccamaw Regional Transportation Authority, resolution number January 2016-05, acceptance of independent audit report for fiscal year 2015.
Do we have any discussion on this matter?
Need a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Do you want to move to accepting this?
I move.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I just wish we had more time to read it.
You got time to read?
I'll let you know to accept it on,
Did you read the final?
information that he gave us.
You want to accept it on the information?
Information we received from the audit,
Yes.
because I don't think anyone had a chance to read it, so we just know what
Mickey
he
said he's read it all.
said.
Well, we
I
did get a
have-
verbal.
I read it
I
this
have-
morning.
If the
Well,
meeting.
you know good to read, ain't got
I
to
have read
understand.
it because we got it
Well, it's
a
a
couple
little
of
bit
days
edited,
ago,
yeah.
but, you know, whether I understood it or not, and he
Well,
explained a lot of it.
there are some
The only
edits
thing
to
I
what we
got
first
was
saw.
the,
I agree, there's a lot of
edits.
edits.
I got the
But-
findings, but I didn't get the.
These are
One-
edits.
one at a
Edits
time,
in
please.
that.
The bottom line
Wait a
is,
minute.
it is a positive
It was on the bottom. of the
Opinion.
findings.
opinion
It was an attachment.
for 15, this, our audit period. I think that's the most important thing.
Well, I withdraw my,
Mr. Wilson, go ahead.
You can't get it on the
I withdraw my, let it go on.
You accept it?
Yeah.
Call for a vote.
All right. We have a vote on it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against it? If we no against, it's approved for the acceptance of the audit.
Waccamaw Regional Transportation Authority, resolution number January 2016-08, approval of Waccamaw Regional Transportation Authority revised FY 2016 budget and adoption of the 15-month fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
Should we say they're proposed? Because I would like to see our budget be adjusted and or amended, as we go along.
Well, man, this is our best guess.
But shouldn't we
Today.
say proposed?
I don't think so. I mean, it's been revised to get us through the 15 months.
Right.
I think we have the right
And
to
if I
revise it
need,
again.
if we need to propose a new revised budget later on in the year, we will do that.
I seriously hope we make adjustments to it.
Yeah, no, I
as we
think
go
probably
along.
will.
Okay?
Yeah, that was my comment in the audit report. He basically dissed us for not making amendments last year.
I agree.
The point is for approving this resolution, no problem, but as a group, I'd like that we be more proactive
Sure.
when they send, not for nickel and dime stuff, that's not what, anything
Right.
really significant that we can't foresee today that comes up. I wish we as a body would go back and make.
I agree with Daryl 110%.
And that can happen without any problem.
Right.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I just think we need to, be apprised that we can do that, and we will do that.
Yeah, I think we need to pay attention to these
I mean,
checklists.
if you think about it, I mean, that's exactly what we're doing today. We're 6 months into the year, and we're adjusting our budget to reflect what's actually going on.
Right.
But again, you're gonna be doing some things that we did not do last year. Like you're going to be expanding service until 8 o'clock at night. You're gonna be doing, quite a few different things.
In the budget.
It's in the
In the
budget.
budget.
It's in the budget.
We put it in last week. Yeah.
That's been,
But I think-
we've
but I
adjusted
think we
operating
need to-
costs to
We
No.
account
still
for
can
that.
go back and
Yeah.
amend the budget, even
Right.
though we adopt this.
Well,
There's
no,
no
I
problem with
understand.
going back and amending.
That's right, that's right.
But it's in there,
The point is get this
anyway,
moving
as long as we can adjust
and
it.
get it, to the council because they
Well,
want
I'll
it.
say yes.
Time frame.
Okay.
Right.
Does it go to the full, why do we have to vote? Does it go to the full council or to the transportation?
I'm gonna bring it to Transportation Committee if you
Then ask
give me a
them.
good vote right now.
Ask them to bring it to the.
Yeah, they'll take it.
We're
They'll
gonna
take it.
vote on this?
Yeah.
Let's call the vote, please.
All right, and we move to call a vote for this particular resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against?
Thank you all.
Wait,
you.
Ron, what did he say?
Okay. Do we need any executive session?
No, sir,
Okay. Old business?
not at this time.
Nobody wants to hear about.
New business?
I do have one thing for new business. Kevin wanted me to mention the items that the Explorers replaced have been sold, the Uplander and the Impala. So that's a good thing. You put them out in gov deals
Yeah,
and they
we-
sold. We got a lot of activity on them.
We sold
so.
the ones that they replaced.
Are the Explorers being used?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I saw one. I asked Brian, why is that thing down here in my neighborhood?
And not just by Edwards.
Yeah, that's what.
And we're rotating through for street supervisors and all that, yes.
We can put our name in anytime.
I'll drive my big old way.
So that's it for new business, sir.
Okay. Announcements?
I would like to commend this, Brian and staff for, get the table at King Day. The chair was there, and I think some
Yes.
other folks was there and stuff. I think Darrell was there, I believe.
Yes.
That was very nice to see coach representation. That was very nice. Also, the fact that my watch is going off now, I'll throw it in the trash can too when I get through and leave it. But I do appreciate the fact that coach was there, and I also like to say that I'm glad we as a board now is really coming to some, realization of what we got to do here and work together. So I'm very happy about what we're going. Glad to have Ron, my first time meeting Ron.
Teamwork.
Yeah, teamwork. Thank you. We're glad to meet Ron. I think we got
Very
a
good.
Superman on board.
You're
Thank you,
doing a
Chair, for
great
doing a good job. Thank you very much.
Okay, can we call for adjournment?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute.
If there are any board members who want to attend defensive driver training, we're trying to schedule one more session. So send me an email and let me know if you want to attend. And as soon as we find out how many we're gonna have, we'll try to get it scheduled and let you
How
know.
long did it last?
It's from 9 to 4.
We got to pay the money for that.
No.
State.
Yes,
You get insurance?
Taxes.
No, you're in.
You're in
Car
church.
insurance.
Yeah.
Can be.
Yeah, I did.
Call
Did you
for an
call for
adjournment.
All in favor of adjournment?
Don't forget to
Aye.
But I gotta sign these,
Resolutions.
resolutions.
I already
He's
signed
gonna
them
sign
already.
them.
already signed
Well,
them.
you
Two
got
new
two
ones.
minutes.
Oh, two new ones.
Yes,
Signed.
Audit
just
and budget.
passed.
Okay.
All in favor?
Thank you.
I think
All against?
They're adjourned.
Okay.
Could we
We are
have this thing
adjourned.
turned off?